Welcome to Community Voices with your host, Tarence Luachie. This radio roundtable features community, business, and religious leaders that discuss current events and topics that impact our urban community. If you would like to be a guest or if you have a suggested topic, contact the station today at 616-259-7342. Now, into the program.
Greetings, this is Tarence Luachie, and you are tuned in to another edition of Community Voices on 91.9 FM, The People's Choice. Blessed today to have in the studio two individuals that will be talking to us about the mortgage process, mortgaging, and even maintaining your mortgage. There's some really interesting things here to know. And so I'm excited today to introduce our guest today, Miss Keturia, and your last name, Keturia, is? Tate. And then we also have Matt and Dhaseleer. I got it right.
Nailed it.
Great. So we'll go by Matt and Keturia. Is that okay? Keturia. Great. So if you're just tuning in, maybe you want to let somebody know that we are on the air. If you're listening in your car, you might want to pause and take a moment here during your lunch hour to find out more about mortgage. They both come from Independent Bank here in West Michigan. 7 branches in the West Michigan area, but 62 branches across the state. So tell us a little bit about what you do. We'll start with you, Keturia.
Yes, so I am the neighborhood lending mortgage specialist, and so really I am able and capable of lending to anyone. However, my focus is to lend to low to moderate income families or income restricted families, just to help them through that process to home ownership. So I work with nonprofits, local nonprofits, to figure out what programs are available, and then also to figure out where the gaps are, where the barriers are for people that are experiencing hardships with purchasing a home. And so I take that information that I gather from the nonprofits and I take that back to my bank, to Matt, and say, hey, we may need to implement a new program, or these are the barriers that they are seeing because they're in the community. They have those connections. So these are the barriers that they're seeing. What can we do as a bank? Mm-hmm. How can we help? So that's a little bit of what I do.
Sure. Independent Bank is a privately held bank, am I correct?
Yes.
Public.
Public.
Okay. But you've been serving the greater Grand Rapids community for how long?
Prior to 1900. We're well over 100 years old.
One of the oldest banks around.
Sir.
Yeah. I kind of knew that. I know how old, though. Well, that's good to know, which means that there's some credibility in what it is that you do to help people buy homes in this community. And I think it's important to establish that right off because there are some barriers. Matt, talk a little bit about what you do with Independent Bank and how you add to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So I am our area sales manager, and my focus is on supporting Keturia and helping any of our other loan officers here in West Michigan, really focusing, working with Keturia on finding, as she mentioned, some of what those barriers are, and working with our executive team and our management to help uncover ways that as a bank, as an institution, we can help break down those barriers and create home ownership opportunities for people who, in many cases, never thought or believed that home ownership might be a reality for them.
Yeah,
and that's partnering with a lot of our community organizations and working with them to understand where the needs are and what we can do to help fill those, and working with the bank to provide resources and encourage people to ask the questions and take that first step towards home ownership.
Sure. Home ownership, that's the focus, and I know that both of you have a passion for that. How long have you been in banking, Keturia?
I have been in banking over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've been with Independent Bank for about 15 years now.
Great. So you know a little bit about what the market is doing these days.
My current role, I've been in my current role for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So I have learned a great deal, but there is a great deal that I still need to learn.
I think we're all learning the way that the housing market is going right now. Yeah, yes. I know somebody who just closed on a mortgage, and enormous interest rate, but they know that as soon as the market corrects itself,
Yes.
they're going to go after a refi. So let's talk a little bit about those products that you make available, whether it's for a first-time home buyer, somebody who's looking to refi, or maybe somebody that's currently in a mortgage situation, to get some information. I know that you all do a Money Matters spot here on the station, and that Money Matters spot airs at 8:30, 12:30, and 5:30 daily. Tell us a little bit about the information that's out there.
So yeah, the Money Matters spots we have out there are about budgeting and savings. It is so important when you're thinking about buying a home that you have a budget in order. You have saved for a deposit or a down payment. So we have the budgeting and savings Money Matters. We also have a credit. That's another component that we're definitely looking at when it comes to purchasing a home. How is your credit? How have you taken care of your credit or used your credits? Do you have any credit? So those are things that we definitely take a look at when we're considering home ownership. So those are some of the topics that are out there.
Mm-hmm. That's what we needed to know. I know that the spots that air are just informational. Are there workshops? Are there connectors for somebody to get further assistance besides listening to what's on the radio? Say I'm shopping for a mortgage. I'm looking around. I want to buy a home. Where do I start?
So you can absolutely call me.
Oh, okay.
Yes, call me and I will get you started. It's good to know where you are currently, where your credit.
Sure.
Have you saved any for a down payment? But if you have no idea where you are with your credit, I can help you realize, where you are and where you need to be if
Sure.
you're not currently there.
Sure.
If you have not saved for down payment, there are some programs available that can help you with down payment and closing costs. For first-time home buyers, depending where you are for credit, we have a great FHA program that starts with the credit score, a minimum credit score of 620. And then we start looking at conventional programs, which we have. If you're over a 700, we try to put you in a conventional loan. And then we have a great product with Freddie Mac, which is called Borrow Smart or Make Home Possible, which is a great program for first-time home buyers. And so they have also combined that program with a down payment assistance program called Borrow Smart. So borrowers could potentially receive up to $1,500 in down payment and closing cost assistance. So those are two great programs we have for first-time home buyers. For the home buyer that has not saved, we have Mr. products available. We can utilize the City of Grand Rapids program that's out there. And then there are some seasonal, I guess you may want to call it, programs through Federal Home Loan Bank of Indiana called HOP that offers down payment and closing cost assistance too. And I believe that's up to $10,000. And there are some, I think there's a minimum requirement of 1% 1,000, maybe 1,000 or 1% that you have to put down of your own funds for those programs. So there is definitely help out there.
Yeah.
So call me, we can get started. I'll go through the application process with you. So we'll start with your application. I would need you to bring with you your pay stubs, your W-2s, your bank statements. If you have retirement accounts, because assets are not required, but it helps definitely, right?
Sure. How will you pay for this mortgage?
Yes.
Once you get it.
For an investment or a big purchase such as a home, it's important to see have you been saving?
Sure.
Have you prepared yourself for this step?
And are you responsible?
Are you
home
responsible?
ownership, and I like the way that Matt put it, it's not just, get a house or we're going to get a mortgage. No, you're actually going to become a home owner. And being a home owner, in this day and time gives you a voice. because you live in a community, and those communities speak to the situations that we are facing. And I think that's important because equity and generational wealth comes through ownership. It doesn't come through people passing cash, back and forth to each other. It's a matter of now getting some real estate, and I always break it down really slow like that. It's real, and it's the estate. It's real estate. And that's something that underserved populations, the Black community in particular, Hispanic communities, hasn't traditionally been able to take a part of. And so I think that independent bank is a great way to get started. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I would certainly agree, and I think home ownership has privileges, and I think that you mentioned the generational wealth and building that wealth, and that's one of those opportunities. And I think a couple of the things that Keturia had mentioned, getting started. A lot of times that's the initial hurdle is overcoming that fear that maybe you might be rejected or you're not in a position, but ultimately planning for home ownership is the first step, and part of that planning is reaching out to an expert, a Keturia, who can guide you, and it's okay. It's not necessarily going to be a no today, but it's going to be here's what we need to do. Let's plan for this. Let's look ahead, and these are the steps that we can take to put you in a position to be a successful homeowner.
Sure.
And allow your family to start to accrue that generational wealth.
Yeah, I think those are opportunities that might be awaiting for somebody who might just be tuning in or just kind of walked in and listening to this. But I'm talking to Matt and Keturia from Independent Bank, and we're talking about all things mortgage. There is a Money Matters inspirational spot that comes on the radio station here Monday through Friday, 8:30, 12:30, and 5:30. Tuning in will give you kind of tidbits of information, but you also have an opportunity to reach out directly to Keturia, who is the neighborhood lending mortgage specialist at Independent Bank. That's a mouthful. So, yeah. So, why do you love your job so much?
Well, I truly love my job because it is rewarding when you are sitting at the closing table with a first-time home buyer. And it's so excited that they have finally made it because the homeownership process, it's a process.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't quite understand why they could be asked for so many documents from underwriting when it's almost time to close.
A stack like that, literally.
Yes, so that is so rewarding. And then also to be able to work with some of the community partners that I have, just being able to volunteer and seeing what's going on in the community and to be able to offer my services because I offer financial literacy classes. So to get a phone call and say, hey, we need you to come and do this. We need you to do this class. I enjoy that. So those are some things that I
would imagine that's quite rewarding for you to be able to see people who you mentioned a little bit earlier who may have never dreamed that they could be homeowners or never dreamed that they could maintain, manage, and be good stewards over a mortgage. That's the what's in it for me kind of thing. It turns you on. It makes it for a better community as well. You mentioned some community partners. Who are some of the community partners that you're working with through Independent?
Absolutely. Link Up is one great community partner. They are doing some great work in the community with affordable housing, making sure that there's a need, right, for housing. And the market right now, housing prices are sky high. So they're putting in the work to get the additional subsidy so that they could reduce the cost and make that property more affordable. There's other partners that are doing things as well. Dwelling Place and ICCF, they have a great community land trust program where they are selling properties. They're discounting them by 25% of market value and selling those properties to community members with low to moderate incomes. So that's another great partner. I think who else?
I know you mentioned some of the other nonprofit organizations like the 1,000 Families of Color.
Yes, 1,000 Families of Color. enjoyed working with that group.
Yeah.
We did a pre-qualification day down at Home Repair Services, which is another a group that I work with. And so we invited the community to come out and just figure out where they are and see if they're ready. And if not ready, let's build a plan to
Sure,
get you
get
there.
ready.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. This is
Yeah.
the steps you need to take to get there. So
Yeah.
I worked with them on that. I am looking forward to doing that again with them in 2024, hopefully. So yeah.
You mentioned sitting at the closing table with a family or an individual who's purchasing a home. That feeling is probably indescribable. But talk a little bit about what that makes you feel like. And Matt, you can pipe in as well. Remember, this is just a dialogue. But that puts a smile on people's faces. Of course, you inherit the responsibility of a mortgage, but it's your mortgage and not rent.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I just had one. I've had a couple young men that were just purchased their home, and we're sitting at the closing table, and their moms are sitting right next to them, and got the phone out. They're ready for pictures, and just so excited and proud of them because at 21 and 20, both 21, to be ready to purchase a home at that age is amazing. So I'm sitting right next to the mom like a proud parent. She's in too, like rooting, like I'm so proud of you. Yes, I'm so very proud of you. So
at 20 or 21 years old is probably the furthest thing from a lot of people's mind. But there are some smarter and more wiser generations that have come along, and people recognize the benefits. You talked about it, and you can share some more. The benefits of home ownership are enormous.
Yeah, tremendous. And I think that's something Keturia has watched and worked with some of these younger people, and they recognize, and some of them are even first-generation homeowners. And you mentioned, mom and family sitting there and the pride that they have and the recognition of what they've accomplished. And I think that's something that takes a lot of hard work. It takes dedication, and it takes trust. Trust in your lender, trust in the bank, the institution that you're working with, and also trust in your community around you that they're going to continue to support you through that home ownership process down the road. It's the greatest feeling for any lender to be able to sit at that table.
Yeah. I know that it impacts the community in a lot of ways. And for a bank like Independent, who's been around for more than 100 years, these efforts aren't new. They are not new. But what do you see for the future? What do you see, since you're kind of monitoring sales and you're seeing what's happening in this region? What do you see for the future as it relates to home ownership, the populations of people, and perhaps even the target audiences?
Yeah, so we obviously have some challenges. We've got, the number of homes that are available is there's not enough.
Sure. So the need is far greater than the stock.
Far greater, and that's one of our bigger challenges. Ultimately that drives up prices. Currently, our interest rate environment is not helpful. Right. So that also limits the affordability. But I can tell you, I don't know of another community, this West Michigan community, that has taken steps to tackle this challenge. We've got an unbelievably motivated community to work together, find ways, think outside of the box, and look at what we can do to try and make this possible, and encourage people to find ways to purchase homes, and whether that's down payment assistance or grants, whether it's local city grants or other grants from even banks. We are tackling this, and at every level, it is top of mind.
Awesome.
For sure.
Looked like you wanted to add something to that. Come jump in, Phil.
No, I totally agree with Matt. We are definitely trying to think of ways, being innovative. and just working with people to try to figure out how to make this happen.
I think taking away the stigma of, the big old bank is unapproachable. That's the main thing, especially for the Black and brown community. Thinking of a banking institution or a mortgage company or a lender as being somebody you're indebted to as opposed to somebody you're in partnership with. And it's a win-win all around. If there is some dollars made on the mortgage, fine, but then if there's equity and property being held by a family, over time it balances itself out. Much different than renting. And I'm not against landlords and renting, but tell us some other advantages of home ownership. Why is it important for people to consider a mortgage?
Yeah, I think in terms of a mortgage, there are you're building equity. I think that's first and foremost building wealth. That creates additional opportunities for investment in the future. We talk about small businesses that can create seed money for those business opportunities down the road to create your own business, start your own business. Use
your own equity.
You bet. Then you don't even have to go to the bank. You're doing that yourself. And I think you had mentioned the big bank stigma, and I think it's compounded now as people are going more towards the internet and doing things on their phones, and they're not walking into the bank. Yeah,
paperless.
Yep. So that personal approach that a lot of banks are getting away from, I think we take a lot of pride in. We encourage people to come into our branches and sit down with somebody and have those conversations versus, a text message or an email, which of course we're happy to do. But
sure, they work too for some people.
Yeah.
Well, we got 6 generations out there now, all of which probably want to be mortgage owners at some point.
Absolutely.
And so the different approaches. I think the home feel of being able to go to your community bank is probably a plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. We are that bank that is going to service our loans. So start to finish, you walk in and get a loan from us. When after you close that loan and you're having issues, you come back to that branch.
So it stays at the bank,
and come talk to us.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why we stand out and we try to make a difference. That's how we make a difference.
Yeah, for somebody who may not be aware of that process, I think the advantage there is you've got somebody who trust, and can work with that's in your local community as opposed to it being sold off to a larger conglomerate or another organization that may change fees, prices, services, that type of thing. So tell us a little bit more about it, how people can get in contact with you all, and we'll take these last few moments of you guys making the pitch for the programs and the services available through Independent Bank.
Yes. So again, my name is Keturia Tate. I am the neighborhood lending mortgage specialist there. My phone number is 616-295-2253 is the way you can contact me. I would love the opportunity to talk with you about your home ownership journey and goals and expectations. So give me a call. I'll love to walk you through the process and help you get started.
Terrific. Matt?
Yeah, and certainly I think the one thing that I would love to share is take the first step. Don't be afraid to come talk to somebody, and it's not scary. It may be a little intimidating, but one step at a time. We're there to hold your hand if needed, and we're happy to guide you, encourage you, all those things that your mom and your grandparents and everybody are doing. Also, that's what we're doing as well as taking care of some of those papers as well to get the loan closed. But we're just as big a cheerleader along the way.
So you become part of the team. You were talking a little bit earlier about those programs, the down payment assistance programs, the incentives of MSHDA. Can they get that information through you, or how should they start the research process prior to coming to you, Keturia?
You can always start the research process prior to coming to me and ask questions. If you don't know, it is my job to inform you what you don't know. So you tell me what's going on, what you want, where you want to live, what you can afford. what you've saved or what you haven't saved, then I am going to do the work to figure out how we get you there.
No judgment zone.
Absolutely not.
I think that's going to be important, especially for those who may be coming out of the recessionary times or even knee deep in that. So thank you both for being here. I really appreciate that. We want to make sure that you get your contact information out again, your phone number.
It is 616-295-2253.
Great. That is Ms. Keturia Tate at Independent Bank. And Matt, thank you for being here as well. We appreciate both of you all and what you have to offer to the community.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Terrific. You have been listening to another edition of Community Voices on 91.9 FM, The People's Choice. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tarence Luachie.
You've been listening to Community Voices with your host, Tarence Luachie. Community Voices can be heard every Friday at 12 noon. This radio roundtable features community, business, and religious leaders that discuss current events and topics that impact our urban community. If you would like to be a guest, or if you have a suggested topic, contact the station today at 616-259-7342. Until next week, let your voice be heard in the community.